Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending August 26th. We've got a big show tonight as Teddy Covers joins us. He's going to stop by to talk about the big news this week as WagerTalk acquires Sportsmemo. We're also going to have another segment of the Handicappers Corner. This week, we're going to take a look at the NFC East and North divisions. Ralph Michaels is in studio with me as always. Dave Cokin has the night off, and we have brought in Bryan Leonard. Cost me a bunch of Leinenkugels to get him in studio, but we've got him. And, of course, behind the controls, we've got Mark Seidel, making sure everything runs smoothly and makes us sound good. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. Let's get this party started.
Wait a minute. If Brian's getting Leinenkugels, why don't I get Miller Lights?
You know what? We could go into all of the reasons why, but I think we should not. All right, guys, let's bring in that first guest. He is Teddy Covers. You know him. He's on WagerTalk, but he is also a big fixture, one of the co-owners of Sportsmemo. Teddy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, not anymore. Thank you. Great to be here, Marco.
Yeah, crazy week for us, Teddy. Wanted to have you on the show this week. We're going to also have you in studio tomorrow so we can go into the big news that's happened this week. It's been a couple months in the making. Finally got everything hammered out late last week, and we were able to come out with the big announcement on Monday where WagerTalk has acquired Sportsmemo. For our listeners that might not be familiar with Sportsmemo, Teddy, give them the backstory on Sportsmemo, and we'll tell them what's going to happen here going through the future.
Well, I mean, gosh, Sportsmemo's been around for, the better part of the last 15 years. A fixture in Las Vegas, a fixture on Las Vegas radio for a long time. We did Sirius satellite radio. We had a national show that we were doing. And it's always been, basically a comparable approach to WagerTalk, where we have, where we've always been small. We've been kind of a niche group. A lot of guys who are based in Las Vegas. There's always been a strong Las Vegas component to Sportsmemo.com, and that will continue on into the future. But the concept of give people a bunch of information and have guaranteed picks or something, the moral equivalent thereof, and that's what Sportsmemo's always had.
Yeah, and moving forward, as you said, it is going to be business as usual at Sportsmemo for the current customers, so they have nothing to worry about. But there are going to be some added features, and, of course, the roster's changed a little bit. We've added some people. Tell our listeners some of the new guys and, of course, the standbys that are there at Sportsmemo.
Well, I mean, the beauty of it is, come to the website. That's the truth of it for right now. There's been a core group at Sportsmemo. Let's put it this way. Brent Crow was at Sportsmemo when I got there. Rob Vino was at Sportsmemo when I got there. So there's a couple of guys, along with myself, who've been there literally since the site started, and they're sticking around. But, we have had a little bit of turnover over the course of the summer, and we're bringing some new guys in. Whoever's coming in is obviously being fully vetted, someone who we're confident can provide winning information in the sports that they focus on. So visit the website. You can find out our current roster. And you should visit the website anyway because there's a ton of great info.
Yeah, Teddy, here are the things that really excite me about this deal. WagerTalk, in the 4 short years that we've been in business, has become a leader in rich media content. Whether it's our radio show, the podcast, WagerTalk News, or, our highly popular WagerTalk TV videos, no other site is putting out as much high-quality free content as we've been doing in the last 4 years. And with this merger now, we're going to be able to pump out even more rich content. As you said, a lot of the guys at Sportsmemo are here in Vegas. We're going to be able to have them in studio doing videos with everybody. And, tell us about some of the things that Sportsmemo has going on that you've been doing and will continue to do.
Well, two of our mainstays have been our blogs and our podcast. Sportsmemo's done a daily podcast, Thursdays and Fridays during football season. That's every game on the board in college and the NFL. I don't know many podcasts like it. I don't know any podcasts like it. We've been doing it for the better part, like I said, of the last 15 years. So it's something we're pretty good at. Drew Martin is going to be hosting the podcast moving forward. He's someone who certainly has cut his teeth as a full-time sports bettor, and someone who I think will do very well in that role. And of course, when you talk about the blogs that we have at Sportsmemo, this isn't your mainstream, news. This is point spread information, totals information, key stuff that people are interested in that can help you make money. So we put that out, obviously, for free every day at sportsmemo.com. And the blogs, they're quick, they're to the point, and they help give you really strong info direct from local sources.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I used to be a sports memo years ago. I don't know if Marco knew that, but yeah, we used to do the shows and everything you had before. I was around basically when you talked about when you were there, and Rob Vino, who just breaks down a game like nobody can. Brett Crow, excellent in the preseason. That's all I remember of Brent. He's been terrific in the preseason. And you mentioned only one of the young guys that you brought on, but you're like us. We tried to bridge the old gap with the new, and you've got a lot of young guys coming on the site and have been there for a while that I really respect.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we're not trying to do, I'm not going to flood the site. One thing that the Sports Memo is we've always had 8 to 10 guys, and we're still going to have 8 to 10 guys. It's not a situation where they're trying to find 100 guys out there, and anyone that's interested gets a gig. But I appreciate the compliments very much, Brian. I mean, we've been the type of website that has been very discerning as to who we hire, as to what type of information that we put out. And, the fact that you were there for, a period of time, Brian, your character's second to none. So it certainly speaks volumes about what we do.
Well, Brian's definitely a character, that's for sure. Looking at one of the things, Teddy, that I'm more excited, you look at this merger, and the thing that's made WagerTalk grow so fast in the 4 years, and I know I'm biased whenever I say this, but we have the best customer service platform in the business. The way we take care of customers and provide offers and deals and everything, and that's something now that we're going to be able to put together for the customers at Sports Memo as we join the two into the WagerTalk family. And I think that it's going to be a great experience for the Sports Memo customers. What has been already a great experience for them is going to be even better. They're going to have more benefits moving down the road.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right, Marco. When you think about what the WagerTalk brand means in the modern betting marketplace, I mean, you guys have a reputation for really strong customer service. And not that Sportsmemo doesn't or hasn't, but I think we'll certainly benefit from the team that you have at WagerTalk and company. And look, there were a lot of Sportsmemo was a smaller brand. It was a niche brand. We were losing a couple of guys. We had to make a move. We had to do something, and WagerTalk, in my mind, was the perfect partner for us. And look, I'm not a sports I am not a website operator. I'm a sports bettor. And it's just something that I'm really glad to have off my plate so I can concentrate on doing what I like to do, which is give content and give winning information to my clients.
Well, that's what it's all about, Teddy, and we're excited about this merger. I want to thank you for joining us here on the show tonight, and you're going to be on the show a lot during the season, Teddy, whether it's as a phone-in guest like tonight or we drag you in here. I'll have to figure out what beverage I got to bribe you with to get you in here, but we'll have you on all throughout the football season, different times, and I look forward to our merger and just growing both brands to make them even stronger than they already are.
I'm a cheap date. You can get me a Mountain Dew, I'm happy. Give me a Dr. Pepper, I'll smile the whole show.
All right, Teddy, good stuff. And good luck this weekend, buddy. I'll see you in studio tomorrow.
Sounds good.
All right, that was Teddy Covers, co-owner of the Sports Memo. When we come back, guys, we're going to step out for a quick break, but when we come back, it is Handicappers Corner. We're going to take a look at the NFC East and North. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. In this week's Handicappers Corner, we're going to take a look at the NFC East and North. We got to start with the NFC East. That's where we have the defending world champs, Philadelphia Eagles. Brian, I'm going to start with you. You look at the Eagles. We know what they did last year, obviously. They got a little bit of, quarterback situation. We know it's going to be Carson Wentz, but the situation is he hasn't had any playing time. Are you concerned moving into the season with Philadelphia at the start?
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about the quarterback situation. You've got both your first and second string quarterbacks that have had some injury problems. You've got a new quarterback coach. You've got a new offensive coordinator. The defense is going to be great for Philadelphia, but I bet you this offense gets off to a slow start.
Ralph, looking at you, Nick Foles won the Super Bowl last year, but it is Carson Wentz's team. Do you think we're going to have any drama if Wentz, because of the injury, gets off to a slow start? People, start yammering that they want Foles because of what ended up happening in the Super Bowl. And it's so funny. Remember when Wentz went down, how it was widespread panic in Philadelphia last year? In the first couple games, he struggled in that, and they were limping into the playoffs, but yet they made that magical run to win the championship.
Well, Foles finished with a 5-2 ratio and only completed 56% of his passes. So when you have a defense like Philadelphia did last year, they ended up being number 4 in the NFL. You're plus 11 turnovers. Most quarterbacks can win with that team. The problem is, like Brian said earlier, when your defense isn't playing well, you're going to need Wentz to be the quarterback that can get you a win. I think those are the differences between the teams. I completely believe Foles believes and knows it's Wentz's team. I don't think there's any issue at all. And even if Wentz is banged up or can't start week 1, I think if Foles starts, and even if he has a great game, no question, Wentz's team, week number 2, they move forward.
Just keep in mind that Foles was about to retire going into last season.
This is true. He had a rebirth in Philadelphia. Ralph, I'm going to stay with you as we move on to the Dallas Cowboys, where 2 years ago they were the best team in the East, had that breakout season, the rookie seasons with Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott. Last year they really fell off. A lot of it had to do, people, put the blame right on Dak Prescott because he had that big regression. For me, the regression was Zeke Elliott. Granted, the suspension was 6 games. But if you remember last year, when every week it was up until Thursday or Friday, we didn't know if he was going to play because it was, back and forth in the courts. They were appealing this. They weren't making a decision. That had to be a disruption to this team for the whole season. How do you think moving forward this year with everything in place?
Well, I completely agree with you that more of it was Elliott being a question mark if he can play. A couple years ago, Elliott had 1,600 yards rushing. That's 100 yards a game. Well, last year he had 980 yards. That was close to 100 yards a game as well. So, Prescott did fall back, and with Elliott not being there, it changed the way they had to run the play action, and Prescott had 12 interceptions, which I think was too high of a number. Now he's going to have to be playing without Des Bryant. Now he's playing without Witten. He loses 3 of his top 4 receivers. But I still think that they're a better team with Elliott there because it gives them the ability to run play action, which they didn't have in the first half of the year.
Brian, I agree 100% with what Ralph is saying. I've always said it that if you've got a great running game, you can take an average quarterback and make them good. You can take a good quarterback and make them great. He was the offensive rookie of the year 2 years ago, Dak Prescott. In my opinion, the rookie of the year really was Zeke Elliott. I think that he was so good because of Zeke Elliott. As we move forward to this year, every year it seems like we enter the season and we say, Jason Garrett, man, he's on that hot seat. He's got to perform this year. I really think right now there's no excuses this year. He had that great year 2 years ago. If we give him a pass for not making the playoffs last year because of the stuff with Elliott, they got to get it done this year, or I think we're going to be seeing a new coach in Dallas.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. I think part of the problem with Elliott was he was out of shape last year because he didn't know if he was going to play or not, and that had an effect on him. But You go back the last 2 years, and the Cowboys are leading the league in a rushing success rate. I mean, for 2 years in a row, they've got that great offensive line. They run the football down your throat. The opponents know they run the football down your throat. Why isn't Dallas using more play action? Because if you got everybody waiting for the running game, you should use the play action and throw more screen passes, and they haven't done that, and that's really hurt Dallas. And, when you take a look at Dallas's defense, it all boils down to the health of the linebacker and Lee. If Lee's there, they're a different team. If he's not, then they got to take some more time off the clock.
Let's not forget either. I mean, Dallas ended up 9-7 last year with Zeke missing 6 games. This was the number 8 defense. No one talks about the Cowboys defense being a top 10 defense, but they improved by over 20 yards per game from the year before. And they were only -1 turnover last year. They were on the negative side of the turnover. So that 9-7 record can easily turn into 10 or 11 wins this year just by playing with the same level with Elliott back.
Well, when you have your attack is a rushing attack, your defense will be on the field less, and I think that was part of it. I'm still not sure that defensively that Dallas is up to that range.
The difference, though, if you go back to 2 years ago, the defense was on the field less than they were on the field last year because they didn't have the sustained drives that they had the year before. And if they have all of the pieces together from the start and are able to do the ball control offense, it will make that defense better. And as you said, if they keep Lee on the field, that defense is definitely – I'm high on the Cowboys. I don't know if you guys are buying or selling. I did a video earlier last week at WagerTalk, and we talked about some of my season wins and stuff, and I am high on the Cowboys. I think this is a team that is definitely going to be it's going to be them in Philadelphia, in my opinion. Moving from them in Philadelphia, we have the other 2 teams. Brian, I'll start with you. It seems like every year when we enter the preseason, you hear all these people with the sexy pick on the New York Giants, and usually, maybe every other year, you might be right because they seem to go from the bottom of the barrel to the playoffs out of nowhere, and then they make a little bit of a run. Is that what we're going to see this year with the Giants? They've another new coach, so you've had 3 head coaches there in a very short period of time. How do you see things going? And we saw last year at the end of the season, injuries just decimated this offensive line for the Giants. Eli Manning had one of his worst seasons ever, if it wasn't his worst, and nobody can throw from on their back. I mean, let's face it. Do you see an improvement in the Giants?
Yeah, definitely. The offensive line is the key to this team. He's actually got great weapons, but the problem is keeping them upright, and it seems like anytime a nice stiff wind comes by, he's falling down. But that's the problem with Eli Manning. I've never been a big Eli Manning fan. I mean, he's been pretty lucky on a lot of his passes that are known to be what his career's been built on, but they've got great skill players on this team. I think the defense is really what's going to improve this year. Keep in mind, and we talk about this a lot, when teams go into a season and they're expecting to do well, and they've got a lot of veterans, and they just struggle, and the Giants, I mean, they were not a 3-win team last year. They were better than that. I think we're going to see some regression. I think the Giants will be right there in the 8-8, only because I think the defense will be that much better. They need, if they could keep him upright for the offensive line, and they do have those great skill players, they could scare some people.
Ralph, you look at the Giants, they made the coaching change. Pat Shurmur is the new head coach. Ben McAdoo last year, to me, it looked like he never really had control of this team. I don't think the team ever bought into him, and it's tough whenever you're replacing a legend, Tom Coughlin, he's a Hall of Fame coach. He's done so many things there, and I don't like being that guy that follows the legend. I think the next guy gets more respect, and that's where we are with Pat Shurmur. How do you see him, and with his coaching style, do you think it fits with what the Giants have?
Well, I don't know. Shurmur's the question mark, what he's going to do. He's very calm. He knows how to control that team. But, you look at the Giants, and they put up 3 points in Dallas in the opener, and their leading rusher in that game was Paul Perkins, who had 7 carries for 16 yards. So you're in trouble if that's the case. Obviously, they draft Saquon Barkley, and Brian made the bold statement that that the Giants' defense is going to improve. Well, when you're number 31 in the league, yeah, you're probably going to improve.
Well, I get one right, okay?
You know, the horrible thing about the Giants is they were minus 60 yards per game. That was number 29, and that was, I mean, that is when you're in a very bad range. So I don't buy in that they're going to be a 9-7 team. You know, maybe 7-9. Saquon Barkley, everyone thinks that, well, you know, running backs never got drafted in the top 10 a few years ago. Ezekiel Elliott changed that. Fournette lived up to his expectations, so everyone thinks Barkley's going to walk in and has a great work ethic. But, you know, this team is still has an offensive line that hasn't run blocked well. This is a team that in the last 5 years has gone 6-10, 6-10, 11-5, 7-9, 9-7. I mean, they haven't put the winning formula on. This is a team that has a quarterback, Eli Manning, that had a 19-13 ratio, you know, last year. So, to me, I am not sold on the Giants.
Well, keep in mind, just 2 years ago, the Giants' defense was terrific. So they've got the same guys coming back. So I think there's going to be a big uptick there. And, yeah, Barkley is a really good player. I don't think he fits this offensive line at this point because they don't block very well, and they're trying to pound him up the middle, and he doesn't go up the middle. He bounces. He bounces outside, and that's what he did at Penn State because they had a great offensive line. So it'll be a different story if they don't get the blocking on this team.
They've never had a run. When was the last time the Giants had a good running team? I mean, they haven't, and this is a team that has struggled offensively for, you know, going back 2 years ago. I think the final 7 games of the season and all of last season, they have only topped 24 points twice from the final 7 games 2 years ago and all of last season. Twice. Once last year and once in those final 7 games. This is a team that needs to find some offensive firepower. And in today's NFL, you can't play those smash mouth games, you know, unless you've got a stellar defense to do it, and they haven't been able to do it because the offense has kept the defense on the field way too long. Let's wrap up the NFC East. Ralph, I'll start with you. Washington, the question is, Alex Smith comes in to replace Kirk Cousins. You know, the big debate for the last several years, how good is Kirk Cousins? Is he worth the money? Washington would never make the commitment. They kept putting the franchise tag on him, which wasn't making him happy. And finally, he left Washington, went to Minnesota. In comes Alex Smith, another guy that all he's done is won where he's been, but he's not that electric quarterback that's going to throw the football downfield, make those explosive plays. But a lot of that was due to the coaching of Andy Reid. Andy Reid was a guy that never stretched the field. How do you see him working out in Washington?
You know, Washington last year was number 16 on offense, number 21 on defense. They were minus 22 yards per game. And basically the team stood pat, making just the change, Alex Smith for Cousins. You know, the way it's coming out of there, they were going to rely on Geis as a running back. He was going to be their number 1 or number 2 running back. So already they have a bad injury, which is going to hurt the offense. You bring in Adrian Peterson if he makes the team. He's not an offensive threat. So, again, without a running game, you're putting Alex Smith in a different situation than he was at Kansas City because Kansas City could run the ball where Washington couldn't. I think any quarterback's going to be mediocre if you can't run the ball, if you don't have the offense to stretch. So, again, I have Washington as a team in that 6 to 7 win range.
Brian, Washington last year, one of their problems, obviously, was the defense. They gave up a lot of points. 9 times last year, they gave up 24 points or more. They did get better at the end of the season. They held the final 3 games, 15, 11, and 18 points. But those 3 teams were Arizona, Denver, and the Giants, who at the end of the season last year couldn't score any points. Have you seen anything in the first 2 weeks of preseason that would suggest to you that this Washington defense is any better?
Actually, I think they will be better, and it's more of a addition of the guys that were hurt last year. They had a lot of injuries on the defensive line, so I think the defense will get a little bit better. Talking about the Redskins offensively with Smith, I like Smith. I think he's a good fit for this team because he's not as wild throwing the longer passes. Last year, he was able to throw the ball longer. In fact, he was better than just about everybody in throwing long passes last year. He's a top 10 quarterback in my book. He was sixth, I believe, in quarterback efficiency last year. That was a breakout year for him. But Rolf's right. You got to have the running game, and the Redskins have not had a good offensive line for when was the last time they had a good offensive line? That was the problem with the Redskins, and they are playing the second toughest schedule this year. So this whole division is going to be very good. And at least in my opinion, their schedule is very tough. It might not show in wins and losses, but I think they're going to be on the right way as long as they get some health on that offensive line, defensive line.
To Brian's point, as far as the defense goes, only 2 players last year on the Redskins on defense started 15 or 16 games. That just shows you the attrition they had and not having any continuity on the defensive side of the ball.
Throwing it out there is before we move on to the next division. Is it Philadelphia or is it Dallas?
It's Philly to me unless Wentz can't go. If Wentz is going to be there, I believe that he's a quarterback that can lead them and get them through some rough patches if the defense goes through a stretch. So I think it's Philly.
I'm not a big believer in the Cowboys. I think I could easily see Philadelphia winning 10 games and everybody else in the division winning 7 or 8.
All right, good stuff. I think it's going to be closer. I give the nod to Philly, but I think Dallas is going to be much more improved than they were last year, and I think we're going to see them somewhere in between that 9-7 that we saw last year and then the year before when they had the big year. Not as good as the big year, but not as bad as last year. All right, let's go to the NFC North, and I'll start with you, Ralph. Obviously, on paper, this looks like a 2-horse race. It's Green Bay. It's Minnesota. How do you see Minnesota? This is the team that's got all of the hype, as we just talked about, Alex Smith going to Washington. Well, you got Kirk Cousins coming to Minnesota. Is he the missing piece to this Minnesota Viking team? We know how good that defense is.
Well, I don't think you need a missing piece. You had the number 1 defense last year. You had the number 11 offense last year with Case Keenum there with a 22-7 ratio. You were number 1 in the NFL, plus 80.9 yards per game, and that was with only plus 5 turnovers. I think you're the best team in football, and I think you now have a better quarterback than you had last year, plain and simple for the Vikings for me.
Case Keenum had a career year last year for them, and for that, he got a big thank you. There's the door. We'll see you. We're going for Kirk Cousins. Brian, do you see this team, Green Bay, it's been Green Bay's division for how long if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy? Unfortunately, the last couple of years, he's had those injuries that have made him miss stretches, and it's cost the Packers. We saw last year the offense couldn't move with Hundley in there. The biggest offensive plays they made was whenever Hundley, the play broke down and he was able to scramble. If Rodgers is healthy, are there enough pieces on this Packer team, or is the window of opportunity closing on this team?
Well, it is starting to close, but I think he's very happy with the rest of the players on the team with what they have. But he's been, yelling at the players in practice and after the exhibition games. He's really intense this year. And if as the Packers go, Aaron Rodgers goes. If Rodgers is healthy, you can't count the Packers out. But I'm with Rolf. I think Minnesota is the best team in football this year. We talked about how Kirk Cousins, when he played at Washington, he never had an offensive line at Washington. And now, granted, they've had some slight injuries to start the season here in Minnesota, but Minnesota's offensive line is night and day better than what he had in the Redskins. And, the defense is excellent on this Minnesota team. We saw it last year, and now they just signed a terrific defensive back. The best, they say the rich get richer. I think Minnesota's a team to beat in the NFL this year.
And a shout out to a friend from Cleveland, Jake Ryan, who went to Westlake, and my son knows him, out for the year with an ACL. Some say he was their best linebacker besides Matthews, and he was their number 3 tackler last year. He's out for the year with an ACL. So that's a big loss again for Green Bay, another injury hit.
Brian, the Lions, they continue to underachieve year after year. There's always expectations with the Lions because if you look at the roster, they've always had a ton of talent. It never was able to get there on the field. Jim Caldwell, I thought he was an upgrade from the previous coach, but he just couldn't get them to that next level. Now we've got, Matt Patricia coming in from New England. Here's the thing. There's been 4 offensive coordinators that have gone from the Belichick family tree, so to speak, coaching tree. You take those 4 guys with their head coaching jobs. None of them have had a winning record, and that includes Bill O'Brien down, in Houston, which probably is the best of the group. Can Matt Patricia get the job done in Detroit?
Well, New England's had such a good record over the years that they continue to grind out different coaches. And when you do that, you're going to be going to a team that's not very good. So it is going to take them a while to get going. I mean, just remember when Belichick, he started his career in Cleveland and got kicked out of Cleveland, just like Rolf. And
you.
But you've got to give these guys a chance. And we've been talking about a lot of line play. The Lions' offensive line last year was terrible. The running game was dead last in the NFL in efficiency. I like the quarterback. Stafford's a gunslinger. He reminds me a lot about talking about the Packers. I mean, the former Packers quarterback, Brett Favre. This guy has a lot of talent. Problem is, he can't stay upright because he's always running around. They got to get some defensive pressure on the quarterback, and if they could protect their quarterback and actually do some running of the football, then they should have a pretty good season, maybe 6-7 wins, but they're not going to be able to compete with the top 2 in this division.
You know what Matt Patricia needs to win in Detroit? Tom Brady. Okay, Matt Patricia last year and the New England Patriots had the number 29 defense. So you are almost the worst defensive coordinator out there, but that gets you a job because you have Super Bowl rings.
Well, you also had a quarterback and an offense that scored quickly, so the defense is going to look worse than what it is.
Understood. The points per game weren't as that bad, but I just make a point that, it's a Belichick tree guy, so they go for him. And Patricia, from what I understand, is probably the smartest coach in the NFL. He is like a rocket scientist. And, that doesn't always translate to being a people person or now taking it to the next level as a head coach. Because as a DC, you were just giving instructions to those defenders.
Eric Mangini was the smartest guy I have ever heard.
Yeah.
And he didn't have any success. I can't believe the guy hasn't gotten another job. He's just, I guess it comes down to more than just being.
He's one of those. He's one of those 4 in that coaching tree. Josh McDaniels, and who was the other one? Cromwell, or the Cleveland coach. You guys had.
The offensive line guy.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't count. But you look at.
Well, he's going to love
Detroit.
to listen to this show.
Detroit. Detroit did what they did last year, getting to 9-7. Not because of their number 13 offense. They had a number 20s defense, but they were plus 10 first downs. They won a couple close games because of first downs, and that usually regresses back to the medium. So I think Detroit, again, Brian, I think, said a 7-9 team, maybe 6-10. I completely agree.
If you've got those kind of records in the first downs, I bet you most of those were, in fact, the vast majority of those were through passing.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that, for me, watching the Lions last year, and remember, they had a couple controversial games. I remember the one against Atlanta. I had a big play on Detroit. Remember when they gave them the touchdown? It was, at the end of the game, it was they had another down, but they ran the clock out on them because they changed the call, and there's no time.
Somebody always remembers the games he loses.
Oh, you always
never remembers the ones he wins.
You always. That's, bad beat territory. You got to have that. But the one thing that I did take away from the Lions last year that I thought in watching Stafford was I thought without Megatron, people thought that they were going to have a big regression. I actually think they were better because he learned to look at the entire field more last year, where before he was always looking to Megatron first and a lot of times was forcing ones up because Megatron would make great catches. I mean, he was one of the best wide receivers in the league, but you gotta use the entire field. And I think last year he did that more without him on the field.
I agree.
He had 2,000-yard receivers with Marvin Jones and Golden Tate. So, when you had Jones stretching the field and having an 18.0 yard per carry, you basically had your replacement for Calvin Johnson.
All right, we're going to move to the last team.
The Bears.
There's a quarterback there that there's a guy behind the mics that might just mute all of us when we get to him, but Mitch Trubisky struggled last year.
Mentor, Ohio kid. Played football at Mentor High School.
And he went to college at some Tar Heel place there that somebody likes. But he had flashes at times. But more often than not, this offense really struggled, and he would make that bad throw too often. Do you guys, where do you see this team going? And they've got a new coach. And I don't know about you, but you think about it now. He was out of college at North Carolina, which he didn't play a lot of games. Remember, this is a guy that got all of that hype off of what did he have? 13 games? Is that all he had at North Carolina?
Yeah, one season.
Then you go to the Bears. You have your first season. Now you've got a new coach. That's 3 different offenses from college to first year to second year. That, to me, is not good for the development of a young quarterback. Keep changing schemes. How do you guys see things moving for the Bears?
I will say that they did keep the same quarterback coach, Dave Ragone, is there and has worked with him for 2 years. So it wasn't that much of a different offense, and he does have the continuity of the quarterback coach there. Okay. So, there is a positive there. But, the problem is the Bears aren't playing in the AFC North, where they beat all 4 teams last year, including your Pittsburgh Steelers. I think their only other win was against Carolina. But they were 4-0 against the AFC North, which is just an anomaly. But you look at the Bears, and they're a team that was minus 32 yards per game. They were number 30 in offense. Well, will Trubisky improve his second year? Absolutely, he'll improve from a 7-7 ratio. The defense, I think, Brian, we talked about a defense earlier where because they were on the field, the Patriots, because they were on the field so much, it helped their defensive numbers. I think Chicago ran such a conservative offense that it helped the Bears' numbers a little bit, and the Bears' defense was actually top 10 in yards per game allowed. But when you look at the talent, I don't see them as a top 10 defense overall. So I have the Bears in that same role where, last year they went 5-11. I might have them picking up 1 or 2 wins, even though their offense will be better. I think their defense regresses a little bit.
I actually really like the Bears, and I hope they continue to struggle in the preseason, because I think we can make some money on them. You talked about the Bears' defense. They were actually, last year, they played the second toughest schedule of offenses in the NFL last year. It probably would have been number 1 if Green Bay's quarterback would have been in there all season long. But this is a team, and you talked about Trubisky, second-year quarterbacks make a huge jump. Warren Sharp did a nice article on this in his book that he put out, and they've all been terrific. If you get the first full year and then you get played second full year, you make huge jumps, and I think that's what we're going to see out here.
Dak Prescott.
He never passes the ball. He just gives it to the running back. But I think the offense is going to be much better, and the head coaching change here is the biggest offseason move for any head coach, just to get rid of the coach that they had before. I think the Bears have a nice future ahead of them, and I think I'll make some money on the Bears.
You think they pass the Lions?
I do think they pass the Lions.
One thing about Trubisky that you bring up as a second-year quarterback, one thing important to remember is he didn't play those first 4 games. Mike Lennon was the starter, and then they had the bye week, and then they went to him and made the change. So you do have a different mindset second year that you're coming into camp as a starter, which does give you a lot more confidence going into that season.
I mean, we're right in the middle of baseball season. How many times do we see these great guys coming up from the minors to pitch, and then they're just shell-shocked? Their first couple starts, and then they settle down. I could see him having so much of a better year than last year.
All right, good stuff, guys. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to preview some games for the weekend. We've got a good baseball matchup for Friday night. And, of course, we got some preseason football. And I even slipped in, yes, there's actually 2 college football games this weekend. We're going to talk about one of them. That'll be up next when we return here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. Time to check out the weekend baseball and football action. Got a couple for Friday night, guys. Let's start it off. Preseason football. This is the highlight for New York football fans. It's the Jets. It's the Giants. They look forward to it every August. And that's basically the highlight of their football seasons after that. But we're going to take a look at this one. And we've got the Jets. It's at the Jets, but they both, share the stadium. The Jets are -2.5, 41 for the total. And you look at this one, Ralph, you're the guru of preseason football. Eli Manning, obviously it's week 3. This is the week that, is the dress rehearsal, so to speak. How much do we see Eli, and does it matter? And then you look at the Jets' rotation. If you talk about it and look on paper what's here, the Jets' rotation is much deeper and better than what the Giants have to offer.
Oh, the Jets have the best rotation in football because you have 3 guys that can play. You have guys that they are potential trade bait. You have a number 1 pick that you want to play. So between McCown, Bridgewater, and Darnold, you can't beat it. This is the 50th straight time these guys have met in preseason, so they're accustomed to it. But, Pat Shurmur's a new coach, so you're not sure what to expect week 3. What Shurmur did say on reports earlier this week is, we looked at this as a regular season game. He said, I was very happy to have 7 days apart between games. They played last Friday, now they're playing this Friday, so they treated it like a normal week. And he did say it's fair to say that we game planned. So at some degree, he did look at the Jets. And some of these coaches aren't. Now, there's some few players who aren't going to see action. Shaquan Barkley's not going to play because he pulled a hamstring last week. It's not like it's an injury that would keep him out of a regular season game, but it will keep him out of here. And Odell Beckham is out as well. Now, when you look over to the Jets, he said all 3 quarterbacks need to be ready to start. So Todd Bowles did not tell his staff who was starting, but Sam Darnold did take all the number 1 snaps this week. The interesting thing to see is if he brings Bridgewater in second, I expect Bridgewater to play the rest of the game and McCown not to even play. But I expect Darnold to start, McCown to come in second, because Bridgewater right now is turning into incredible trade bait. And I would want, if I was a head coach, to play Bridgewater in the 4th quarter against the number 3s instead of putting him in early against the number 1 or 2s.
Brian, how do you see this one?
Just a quick comment there. If they're not sure who their quarterback is going to be yet, wouldn't you want to play each one of them as much as you can against the number 1s?
Well, you don't know. Darnold's practiced with the 1s all week. So you got to expect Darnold's going to start. If you're practicing with the 1s all week going into a game situation, you're going to play him. So, Bridgewater is not going to start, and Darnold's going to make the team. So right now, McCown's going to make it. Bridgewater's going to – Darnold's going to play. I think you either decide you're going to say, yes, we're starting Darnold all season, or we're going to bring him in a bye some point. But I don't think anyone thinks that Sam Darnold is not going to be the starter by Game 16. No matter what happens with the Jets, unless McCown gets them off to a 6-0 start and they're in the playoff hunt.
Well, the Jets have always done very well in this preseason matchup, normally because they're not very good and the Giants are good. Well, the Giants weren't very good last year either, so we're getting a little bit of a situation here.
And a new head coach for the Giants.
We don't normally see. I don't do a lot with the preseason because there's so many things out there with the 2nd, 3rd, 4th string guys. So I'll just if Rolf says bet a play, I bet the play.
I look at this one and I just can't ignore that quarterback rotation. No matter which combination they throw at him, when you get to the 4th quarter, the Jets are going to have such a tremendous edge in the 4th quarter that this might even be a game that you look at, and might want to play second half. Look at where they're at and what the line is, the score is at the time. But I agree with you 100%, Ralph. It's Teddy Bridgewater, unfortunately, that's going to be the odd man out.
Not unfortunately, because he wasn't going to play. Yeah, he's going to go to another team, and they're going to get a 5th or 6th pick for it, and he's going to have potential to start because he's proven that the injury is healed. He's taken his hits. He's made some runs. He's made nice pass progressions. Yes, he missed the whole year with injury, horrific injury, but he's proven that he is legitimate trade bait and could potentially start for another team.
Let me clarify what I meant there. Unfortunately, I think he should be the starter of the Jets until Darnold's ready. I think there's more upside on Bridgewater than there is on McCown. That's the way I feel.
He's new to the system. Whereas McCown was there before, so
but he's adapted to it pretty quickly. He's
gone against
the second season. He's going against the
Atlanta doesn't play anyone in the preseason in Washington. Game 2 didn't plan anything either. So Again, you can make anyone look good in the preseason. Any veteran can look good in the playing against threes in the preseason.
I believe the Browns were 4-0 in the preseason last year.
Yeah, man, where'd that get them? All right, guys, let's move over to baseball. And I picked this one of the Friday night card because of the implications that the game has. You've got St. Louis is on this tremendous run right now. They're the Oakland A's 2.0. The A's had their run, still have their run going.
17-4 run for St. Louis, yeah.
Yeah, this team just continues to roll right now. They've got a pitcher on the mound, Michaelis, that 13-3 for the season, an ERA of 2.80, a whip of 1.04, and he's almost like clockwork. He's going to go out there and get you those 6 innings, occasionally maybe grab you the 7th inning, but he's going to be out there solid for 6 innings. They're playing well right now. They're going into a tough place. They're going into Colorado. This will be the second stop on the road trip for St. Louis. The first series didn't bother them. They went to, L.A. and the Dodgers, man. This thing's, starting to unravel again for them. Colorado's in the thick of things. Big game. Bryan, we'll start with you. You're the guy baseball right now. You're killing it. I was trying to stay with you there for a while, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've had a bad 10-day run with baseball after, I had a great season, but you're still killing it. Tell us what we're looking at here.
How good is your baseball season, Bryan, before we get to this game? Plus 100-plus units. You've doubled the bankroll.
Yeah, we won on Detroit, 4 stars today, so we're up 159 stars on the season.
So if you started with a $10,000 bankroll and you're betting $100
almost
a star.
$26,000.
Yeah, $26,000, 2.5 times your bankroll.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Matt Holliday, back in baseball, playing left field, batted 5th today for Colorado. I don't know what the hell to make of that. I know he's somebody who's going to help them in the locker room, but are they really in need of Matt Holliday coming out of basically retirement to come back on this team? 2 teams red hot right now. Colorado playing at home actually has a little bit of advantage. Normally, you can bet on Colorado at home, bet against them on the road, but this year they're actually hitting better on the road than what I thought they would and not hitting as well at home.
And the flip side to that, their pitching better at home than it is on the road.
They
for
put
most
humidors in this year.
Well, they've actually used something the last couple of years, but when your normal over/under is 12 and everybody else in your division is 7.5, there's something that needs to be done. But you take a look at Michaelis, a guy that came over, I believe he was in Japan last year, and he comes over and he's a guy who played in the majors before and didn't do well. And then he went out there, he found himself, and he's not a big strikeout guy, but he's a guy that knows how to pitch. And actually, I believe he's 7-0 on the road. I mean, for those who still count wins and losses, 7-0, which is pretty good, and his numbers are just slightly worse on the road. But I don't believe that he's ever pitched in Coors Field. I know he didn't pitch this year in Coors Field. So this will be his first time pitching there. But how do you go against St. Louis right now? I mean, it's one of those teams, and I had St. Louis last night against the Dodgers, and part of my handicap was, I do a lot with stats, but part of it was if you watch the games, this St. Louis team is like a bunch of young kids, and Rolf has talked about this with the Indians in the past because everybody in the locker room loves each other so much that this is a team right now that's feeling it. And I don't want to go against St. Louis.
Winning's contagious, isn't it?
Yeah. When we went, we did the radio show on Tuesday, Dave said, I'm taking St. Louis till they lose 2 games in a row. Do you know it's been a month since they've lost 2 games in a row? You got to go back to July 23rd to find the last time that they lost 2 games in a row. This team's just playing phenomenal baseball. And, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But Senzatella goes for Colorado. He's limited starts. He was in the bullpen, limited starts. But since they put him back into the rotation, he's pitched well the 2 starts at Coors. Again, we talk about you're supposed to pitch better away from Coors, but he's been phenomenal in his 2 starts. St. Louis, you talk about, this is a tough place to come in. St. Louis does have one advantage coming in here. They didn't have to play today. So they had a day to come in, rest, and if there is, get acclimated to the altitude, they had a day to do that. Colorado played today, but they played a day game, so they didn't, and obviously didn't have to travel, but still a slight edge to St. Louis if you're looking for angles.
Well, if you're looking for the Colorado pitcher, he's a 23-year-old. Last year he had a 4.68 ERA, making 20 starts. This year he has a 4.47 ERA, but he's only made 6 starts. So he pitched a lot in the bullpen, had a 14-6 strikeout walk ratio in the bullpen. What concerns me, as a starter, yes, his 2 home starts, he has a 3.0 ERA. Yes, his 4 starts on the road, he has a 5.46 ERA. But his 2 starts at home with that 3.0 ERA is a 1.43 whip. He has a 24-13 strikeout walk ratio as a starter. So, yes, he's had some good numbers. Yes, he's pitched out of some jams at home, but that tends to lead to the visitor having a good day against him. It's going to catch up with him. Couple quick stats. St. Louis 21-10 as an away favorite this year. In the last month since the All-Star break, they're 7-2 as an away favorite. Colorado at home, you guys talked about this year being down a notch. They're 32-28 at home. That's minus 4 units with their average line. As a home dog this year, and I'm guessing they'll be a home dog in this game, they're only 4-7 as a home dog in Coors Field.
Well, you mentioned the whip, and a lot of things I like to do is, if you don't really want to go searching out, which is harder to do, it's getting more pervasive anymore with ESPN. But if a lot of people still talk about ERA, and I still throw it out there just because your old-time handicappers know what ERA is. Whip is a little bit new, but that's a telling sign. Also, a lot of people don't pay attention to it, but batting average against. So if you've got a guy with a high ERA and his whip is very good and his batting average against are really good, I throw out the ERA a little bit, and it doesn't mean as much.
Vice versa.
Yeah,
too.
Right.
Looking for the value. It's a tough game. Early numbers on that, I didn't see what they came out with on the lines.
I'm guessing St. Louis 120.
I'll have that for you in 1 second. And but looking at this one heading into tomorrow, you got to go with what Dave says. Until St. Louis loses, why step in front of them? Early number has it at a 106 St. Louis for Friday night.
I think that line goes up a little bit. I was thinking more in the 120 range.
I think
also.
There's value with St. Louis. I mean, I wouldn't jump off that train.
Now, obviously, we've been doing radio all day, and I haven't seen the pitchers that Colorado had to use in that game. But it was a low-scoring game. It was 3-2 in the 7th. So as long as Colorado didn't blow out their bullpen,
and we knew the starter went to the 7th, and then they made the first call to the bullpen in the 7th. So whatever happened after that.
Moving to Saturday, we've got football action, and we've got the Atlanta Falcons in Jacksonville. And, here's a spot, and I'll start with you again, Ralph, since we're in preseason. Atlanta's played this preseason like they don't give a rat's what about the preseason. Matt Ryan's not had a lot of action. It is dress rehearsal week. Does that change for Atlanta, or is this a team, they know what they got, they're still just going to go, get him his few reps, get him out, and then go from there?
You know what? Toss the dress rehearsal out the window. There's so many coaches that aren't going with that this year. It's changed. There's so many young coaches. Dan Quinn, you said, doesn't give an SH about preseason this year. Well, last year he went 0-4 straight up in ATS2. He's resting at least 7 starters this game. Devontae Freeman and Julio Jones are both healthy, and he's not playing them. And you look on the opposite side, and you look at Doug Maroney. Well, he said, every player on my team is going to be ready to play. It doesn't matter if they're injured or not. No one is injured severe enough. He also says, I believe you get better by playing and not practicing. He also said, this preseason game is like a practice game for us. We will treat it as such. I like Jacksonville.
I agree with you, Ralph. And you look at the quarterback situation in Jacksonville, basically they've only used 2 quarterbacks. The third guy's gotten some token action, but it's
not even in week 2. Week 1, Tanner Lee only threw the ball 8 times, right? Yeah.
You got Blake Bortles and Cody Kessler, and Cody Kessler has looked good in the preseason. Again, he's facing, number 2s and stuff, but this is a team that I think philosophies and what's going to be on the field. I think Jacksonville's got a huge edge in this game.
Yeah, I agree. Atlanta, as you pointed out, just doesn't care. A lot of people don't care, and if I was a head coach, I wouldn't care at this point with trying to prove anything in the preseason. You just try to keep your players healthy. You want to be able to get an extended look at the guys, your younger guys that you drafted, and it makes a lot of sense.
And you said Case Keenum.
No,
I mean Cody Kessler.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I see K in my mind, and he was 11 of 16 last week. But let's remember, he was on the road in a nationally televised game at Minnesota.
Yeah.
That's a big difference because Minnesota was playing their starters to start the game, and Minnesota's number 2s are probably as good as the Giants' number 1s. No, not quite. Sorry, Brian. I didn't mean to.
Between your two comments about New York and yours there, coming from people that are from Cleveland, I don't think we have anything to talk about.
Yeah, you guys shouldn't be throwing a lot of
We have
stones
to
around
deflect,
there.
right?
Yeah.
Be big Browns fans.
All right, college football Saturday. Brian, we'll start with you. It's college. I know you work the numbers. Now, this is a game that right now the current number is Wyoming 3.5, and the total's 45. But when this game opened up, this line was a lot higher, and we've seen it gradually continue to come down. And this week now, bottoming out at 3.5. Does it go any further? Do you get to that 3? And are you buying into this money coming into this one with Wyoming, with the line dropping, everybody taking the home dog?
One of the things I always do is I take a look at the teams who lost players in the top rounds to the NFL, especially when it's a team from the Mountain West Conference. This is not a very good conference. And they lose a number 1 draft choice, a first-round draft choice. I believe he went 7th. But you take a look at his stats from last year. He was not very good. And so I don't know what to make of that, what to make of Wyoming. The only thing I know is Wyoming's defense is going to be the best unit on the field. Mm-hmm. New Mexico State, they're selling tickets for $3. They're going to pack the place. It's a huge environment. And I think a lot of people are thinking because, you always like to take home dogs when they've got a reason to play, and it's a big deal for them. So I can see it going that way. But my power ratings have Wyoming winning this game by 8. And if it gets down to 3, I don't know if I'll play it, but I'll be leaning that way.
Ralph, you look at Wyoming, and as Brian said, they're loaded on what they're bringing back as far as numbers. They're bringing back 9 starters on offense, 8 starters on defense. The one that they're missing, obviously, Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills' number 1 pick. But like Brian said, I never understood the hype with Josh Allen last year with all these scouts saying, before the season started, they were putting him as a, number 1 pick, potential him in Darnold for USC. And, man, I just never saw it last year. I know he had some injury problems last year. He wasn't 100%, but I still saw him make decisions that a top-rated quarterback in a conference like the Mountain West, and I know we're here in Vegas and we're ripping on the Mountain West, but we got to call it what it is. It's not a strong conference. And his play last year, I don't think they're going to miss him that much.
Well, you have a quarterback that he's an NFL draft pick because he's got an arm as strong as anyone. He can make every throw. But in the Mountain West, he only completed 56% of his passes. I think they only averaged 23 points per game. That's off the top of my head in offense. Any quarterback they put up is going to complete 56%. Any quarterback they put out there is going to average 23 points per game. Brian said they have the best defense they have the best unit on the field Saturday. I think they have the best defense in all of the conference, and I think they're that good. You have a coaching staff that, remember, took over a team that only won 2 games, and yes, he struggled his first 2 years here, but he's had 8 wins back-to-back years, and this is the guy that built the North Dakota State program. He is a quality coach. He has quality assistants. Now you flip to the other side. I think New Mexico State's loss as a quarterback is much greater because they have a quarterback who was a 4-year starter in Tyler Rogers. He is the number 2 all-time passer in New Mexico State history. He's gone. You have Larry Rose III, who could have played in the SEC last year. He's that good. He leaves as the number 2 all-time running back rusher at New Mexico State in their history. You're losing 2 4-year starters that are the guys that are going to be career leaders in your program. Money New Mexico State doesn't have money. They had 8 coaches this summer. They couldn't even afford the other 2 coaches to fill the spots. You didn't have a quarterback coach until last week. You got a brand new starter who's a JUCO who's coming in who didn't have a quarterback coach. I'm going to come out strong. I like Wyoming.
Bryan, I got to ask you, when I agree with everything that we've talked about, that we should be looking at Wyoming, because I always feel, too, that when you have that marquee name that leaves the program, they overreact. Josh Allen is going to get more of a reaction from the betting public leaving than the quarterback for New Mexico State, which, as Ralph pointed out so greatly, should be a bigger, deficit for them. Where's this money coming from? This is
how much money is it? This line's been out for a couple weeks. How much money is really moving this line? This isn't an NFL game that the line got put out on Sunday and it took millions of dollars to move it.
When you take a look,
but it's only moved one way. That's the thing. It's continually creeped its way down.
When you take a look at the line moving around this game and the amount of bets, the bets are coming in on Wyoming. The money is actually a little bit more on Wyoming, but the big bets are coming in on the dog. Now, is the big bet coming in on the dog? Because you're not allowed to get it. You can't get a whole lot of money on this game. You said it's been out for 2 weeks or so. You couldn't get a lot of money before. So it's not going to take a whole lot of money to bring this number down. Is this a setup? I think it's a setup. I think once this line gets to 3, then the bigger money comes in and plays Wyoming. So if you do like Wyoming and you see the game hitting 3, you better get your Wyoming money in at that point.
Now, if it hits 3, I don't think it's going to be there.
I think
for
3.5. You jump on it. I think it goes 4.5 or 5 game day.
All right, good stuff there. Let's move to Sunday, the last one we're going to preview here for the weekend. We got Cincinnati at Buffalo. Buffalo heading into this week, they got a little bit of a situation with the quarterback. A.J. McCarron got dinged up last week, so that's going to take him out of the mix. So you've got Josh Allen, you've got Nathan Peterman for Buffalo, who will see the significant time there, Ralph. Cincinnati, on the other hand, how much does Andy Dalton play? Even though this is the dress rehearsal week, you've got a coach that's old school. You talked about there's a bunch of new coaches this year, and they're taking they're not making the big emphasis is the past for the dress rehearsal week 3. What's Marvin Lewis do in week 3 with this team?
Well, here's what Marvin Lewis said. He said, we're focusing on the regular season with our players. He says, we don't game plan in the preseason. He says, we're all about showing our players in the regular season, and since we don't play this team this week, we don't care. All I care about is tempo. He then went on to say, I know what Mixon can do. Mixon doesn't need 10 carries. I'm happy to see Mixon get 2 carries. He obviously does not care about this game. He's not game planning. Buffalo, you have another situation. For Cincinnati, if Dalton gets a few snaps, you're then going to go through 3 quarterbacks all trying to get their rhythm. Matt Barkley, Jeff Driscoll, and the rookie Logan Woodside out of Toledo. Buffalo, you're going to have Allen start, clearly, and you're going to have Nathan Peterman. That's it. You're going to have 2 quarterbacks. They're going to get their rhythm. Both were fighting for the job. Both were taking number 1 snaps. And, I'm very happy that McCarron isn't injured. He's going back to play his old team. He's going to practice a little bit this week. And the coach even left it open that McCarron might play some depending how he gets through practice, but I'm sure they're not going to play him. It'd be silly to do that.
Why would you do that?
But to me, Buffalo hasn't told me they want to win yet. We're still a couple days away, and we're going to get some more press conferences. But I clearly know Cincinnati doesn't. So this is a case where I'm going to look to be on Buffalo with a few days left, or I'll pass the game if Buffalo says they don't want to play. But everything right now has me pointing towards the Bills.
See, the thing with the preseason, guys, and now you're saying you're waiting a couple days and you got to make that decision when you're going to do it. All indications line up but we already know Cincinnati doesn't care. Why wait? Because we've seen how fast these preseason lines have moved, and we saw that it's affected a couple of the games already where the number has fallen at the end. We saw it Monday night with the Baltimore-Indianapolis game. If you know this one's going to, it's only going to go one way. If you like Buffalo right now, why not take them now? And you know what? When we get to the best bets, you'll find out.
I'll tell you one thing too. When you look at Sean McDermott in his second year, and you say, well, he was only 1-3 straight up in ATS last year. Well, last year he played his 3 losses: Minnesota, at Philadelphia, and at Baltimore with Jeff Harbaugh. So sometimes that 1-3 record doesn't mean it's a coach that wanted to go 1-3.
Yeah. All right, Brian, anything you want to add here?
No, nothing on this game.
All right, guys, we're going to take our last break of the evening. We're going to come back. Best bets are up next. I kind of already hinted to mine. We'll have that in a moment when we return on the Wager Talk Podcast. Welcome back to the Wager Talk Podcast. It's that time of the show. Best bets. We got 3 of them last week. 2-1 on the show. Let's keep this streak rolling. Let's get a streak like the A's or the Cardinals in baseball. Let's get it going. Let's start with you, Ralph. Saturday, there's 2 college football games. We talked about one of them, but you're going to talk about the other.
You know, it's very rare that there's 2 games week 0, and I have a strong opinion on both of them. And I'm going to use the second one as the best bet, and it's Colorado State, Hawaii under the total. You know, you look at the situation and you think Hawaii is switching to the run and shoot this week or this year, and that means it's a positive and it's an automatic high score. Well, I'll tell you what. They have a sophomore who's never thrown a pass or has thrown 1 pass in his career, and they have 2 true freshmen. They don't know who's going to start. They're splitting reps. You come to Colorado State, you only have 9 returning starters. There were 2 teams in all of college football last year that had a 4,000-yard passer, a 1,400-yard receiver, and a 1,400-yard running back. Those 2 teams were Colorado State and Oklahoma State. Well, Colorado State lost all 3 of those players, their running back, their quarterback, and their receiver. They only returned 9 players in all. You have a quarterback, Mike Bobo, who's been in the hospital the last 8 days. He hasn't taken part of this. He has some sort of diabetes and the numbing of the feet. They don't even know he's going to be there. The OC has taken over the head coaching role, so now you're out of sync with the offense. Plus, the most important thing, it's a conference game. There aren't going to be flea flickers. There aren't going to be double reverses. You're not going to try cute things in a conference game that you think you could win to start the year. I like the under.
All right, good stuff from Ralph. Under 56.5, Hawaii, Colorado State for Saturday. Moving to Sunday is my best bet. I hinted to it when we talked about the game, and I just think this is an incredible situation for Buffalo on Sunday, and I'm jumping right now because I think this line's only going to go one direction. Marvin Lewis, this is a guy that I don't, he's already said he doesn't care about the game, and he must not care and worry about a hot seat. He's worried about the regular season. I'm shocked that he's even back here this year. We talked about that in a video earlier this year at Wager Talk. That was the biggest surprise of anybody they got brought back. I just don't understand
him or Hugh Jackson going 1-32.
Yeah. Well, they knew it was a rebuilding process, and the team didn't have a quarterback. Okay, Hugh Jackson got himself another year. He doesn't win this, win a few games this year. It'll be a different story. But Marvin Lewis, I don't know how he's still here. He's not going to risk hurting anybody here in the preseason. He knows what he's got to go with, and that's what he's going to do. Buffalo, on the other hand, they made the playoffs for the first time last year. You've got excitement around the team, whether it is Josh Allen or it ends up being, Nathan Peterman. A.J. McCarron is the guy that was, destined to get the job until Allen was ready, but he's dinged up. You're going to have 2 quarterbacks that are going to go long in this game, and both of them are competing, and both of them have played at time. Peterman's played good in the preseason. Josh Allen's had his moments, but he's capable of, moving the team. I like Buffalo in this one. I think they go for it. I'm taking Buffalo as my best bet on Sunday. Brian, you're going to wait for me to tally up the win-loss record of the best bets for a whole week because you're moving to week 1 of college football.
Didn't we just talk about how much we hated Allen, and now you're betting on the team that Allen's playing on?
But it's preseason, and they're going against a team that doesn't care.
Makes a lot of sense.
It does.
To somebody.
I'm
going to take a look. This is going to be a primetime game coming up week 1. We're in week 0 now. Virginia Tech and Florida State. I don't like the Virginia Tech defense. I think they're going to take a step back this year. But the main reason is you have Florida State, a team that recruits great athletes. And Jimbo Fisher had one of the slowest paces for his offense in college football. When you have superior athletes to the opposition, you want to have more plays in the game. You don't want to have less plays in the game. And now they're bringing in the head coach, used to be at South Florida. He loves pace. He just get up there, don't huddle, just get up there and run. They're going to have a lot more plays this year, Florida State games, than they had in the past. And I talked about the Virginia Tech defense. They haven't played yet. It'll be their first game, and now they're playing up against a hurry-up offense. I like the over in this game. And the line has moved all week long, and it's going to move even higher. So get this one in as soon as you can.
And, Brian, to make your point with Virginia Tech, they already have lost 2 starters in the secondary. Both players that were supposed to start as cornerbacks, one tore an ACL, one is academically ineligible. So now they're going through who was going to be their second and third string cornerbacks are now going to get a start against that Seminoles in week 1.
And when you're looking at returning starters, obviously with the way the passing game is now, you look at your quarterback, you look at your receivers, you look at your defensive backs. Those are the returning starters I want in the first game of the season.
Add to your thing, and we're jumping all of us giving you the unanimous vote here with this one. Justin Fuentes, this is year 2 for him as the head coach for Virginia Tech. Frank Beamer's teams were always slow. Okay, it was built on defense, grind it out. Justin Fuentes come in last year, changed the pace some. But he still had Frank Beamer's players last year. Now it's year 2, and it's going to be more design of his style. And his team, when he was at Memphis, put up points. Now, granted, it was a different conference, but you add that, this game is based on when they're putting the number up, the odds makers, what they have to look at is what Florida State has done last year, what Virginia Tech has done, and you've got 2 teams that are going to be different, totally different looks, and I think you've got an outstanding play, and the more you can get down early, the better you're going to be, because this is one, I think, that as the sharps come in more and gets the game day, this is one of those college football totals that could end up moving 3 or 4 points before you get to game day, and you might have some value if you want to take a little bit of a hedge back.
Yeah, it opened at 52, and nobody's betting. Your general public isn't betting this game this early. So it's all sharp money, and just from yesterday it's moved a 1.5. So it'll be higher.
And especially because it's Labor Day. So you're going to go through all week 1 Saturday. You're going to go through Sunday. Then all of a sudden you're going to have Monday Night Football with no NFL action. And what are people going to bet?
They're going to bet the over.
They bet the over. That's what they bet. Good stuff, Brian. Good having you in here this week. I want to thank all of our guests. Teddy Covers, big thanks to him. Ralph Michaels, Bryan Leonard. Yes, the Line and Kugels are outside. They're waiting for you. You're happy. So maybe we'll get you back here in here for a podcast down the road again. I'll make sure that I have Line and Kugels. But that's only
it's a seasonal beer, so
the summer shandy, yeah.
You better stock up now.
Yeah. Christmas ale, Great Lakes.
And we want to thank our man behind the booth. He runs the controls, makes us sound good. Mark Seidel. Big shout out to Johnny Detroit. He's the guy that gets us up to all of the social media sites. You can find us iTunes.
Is he out drinking already tonight?
Well, that's what I was going to say. We got to put a little bit of a disclaimer. Tonight's podcast, you might if you're listening to it, obviously you hear us because it's up, but it might be up a little bit late. And if you're wondering why it was up a little bit late, well, Johnny Detroit is in town here in Vegas, and I can tell you, if you own stock in a vodka company, you're going to see it go up this week with Johnny in town. That's it for me, Marco D'Angelo. We'll be back next week. Until then, let's cash some tickets.